My guest today is a stand-up comedian and an actor by the name of Paul Green. It was a great conversation and it was great to have him on the show. Here's Paul Green, you guys. Can we get a little bit of background on you?
Absolutely. So I'm a stand-up comedian here in Los Angeles, acting the whole bit. Originally from Arizona, where I cut my teeth in the comedy biz. I started out actually as a improv comedian with an improv troupe called The Jesters, and then started taking a stand-up comedy class from a man named Tony Disick in Tempe, Arizona. And it was actually Tony who was like, what the hell are you doing in Arizona? Why don't you take your talents to Los Angeles? And so after about a year, he finally convinced me. And yeah, I've been out here in Los Angeles area for about 6 years now. So that's the general overview of my comedy career.
Very nice. So about 6 years now you've been out here in Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
Very nice. And so moving forward, after everything that's taken place with the last couple of years now, things are opening up a little bit more, and it appears that Los Angeles is opening up. We're seeing some more comedy, so that's good. That's awesome, man. Well, during the quarantine, were you able to get some writing done, some material? What was that like? A lot of people had a hard time focusing on certain things, but were you able to actually get some, work written?
Yeah, I was booked on a lot of Zoom shows, even a couple corporate shows, and I was able to travel and do shows. Not all of the states were strict as Los Angeles. Los Angeles was by far the most strict, or one of the most strict of the lockdowns. And so, but yeah, I was still able to get some comedy in and do some writing and still just hone the craft and continue to progress. So. Now that things are opening back up, it's been great. I didn't just take the year off, so definitely did relax a little bit, but not too much. I didn't want to get too soft and lose too much of the skill set in the act that I've been honing for the last 5-6 years. But obviously, it was a challenge for everybody. But overall, I was able to still get out there, do comedy, do Zoom shows, and travel for comedy as well. So it wasn't as horrible, I guess. Is what I'm saying.
And we got a lot more digitized through the process. Now everything is online. So you were already doing the Zoom, even though you heard a lot of mixed responses about that. It's still working towards the craft, and it's still adapting to that digital style of doing things that we're still learning. But you're working with the punches, and there's a lot to say about that. You can't really worry about things that are out of your control. And it's really, the world is a lot easier to maneuver around when you relieve that stress of judging everything around you and you sort of place that on yourself, right? You place that responsibility. You can't change the world if you don't change yourself. So it sounds like with you, you take that personal responsibility and that journey of bettering yourself and then just allowing that to be your main focus instead of the externals, which are oftentimes out of our control.
Oh, absolutely. I'm way into the self-help industry, so I do a lot of just a lot of work on myself, a lot of work on my spirituality, my emotions, my physical health, and it's always easy to point to external problems, and Lord knows there are plenty of external problems to be pointed to and to use those as an excuse. And great, I mean, if that's what somebody wants to do, but I've got enough to work on right here within me, and I've got enough flaws and weaknesses that I'm always working through, and my own demons to slay. So I just try to put as much effort on focusing inward on what I can control, on how I can improve myself, how I can grow, how I can hone my craft, how I can always be putting my best foot forward, making sure I'm always bringing the best energy. I mean, there's so much that appears arbitrary in the entertainment industry in terms of, you know, who makes it, who gets picked up, who gets booked for this gig, who gets booked for that role, who blows up, who doesn't. You know, it's and swimming in those weeds. It's just, I mean, I think it's impossible not to do a little bit, but I find that the more I can train myself to not focus on that and just to say, hey, despite what's going on out there, I do have control whether or not I show up to that open mic. I have control whether or not I work on that routine a little bit more. I control whether or not I try to refine that joke a little bit to see if I can get a better punch out of it. There is so much that I have control over. And so, yeah, just more and more, I just try to focus on that and what I can be doing. And then just trust that the more that I do that, the more that the opportunities will, you know, out there, those things that I don't have control over will start to pop up. And, you know, and I found that to be the case. Just the more that I put my head down and just work on my craft and work on my energy, work on my spirituality, work on, again, even my physicality, that seems to then attract more opportunities as I'm doing that. And not even really, like, I'm not actually proactively going towards, you know, pounding on everybody's door, trying to, you know, spam every booker in the country, trying to spam every casting director or whatever. It's like, well, no, I'll just, you know, I think it was Steve Martin, you know, who just said, just become undeniable. Just become so good that they can't ignore you. And
absolutely.
And I look at it, if I get ignored, then that's on me. That means I need to go back and become better so that the next time that person sees me, they can't ignore me. So
absolutely. You do need some thick skin to receive that negative feedback that you might receive, but you have to be able to keep working at the craft. And I think I even heard Jay Leno saying not too long ago on a talk that he would offer $50 up front, or, you know, to the booker and say, this is for you. Let me go up there. If I'm terrible, you could keep the money, and if I'm good, you give me the money back. And that's how we got into a lot of his gigs. He was paying them up front to let them do the job. So there's a lot of these American dream approaches that you have to take, but more than anything, it's just that thick skin and being able to just focus on yourself. Like you said, you keep the mind, the body, the spirit healthy. You're able to maneuver and gauge the situation a little bit better, especially in those fields where personalities, at the atmosphere, a lot is taking place. So you got to roll with the punches. The name of the game is roll with the punches in that department.
Yeah, it's really...
What's an everyday thing for you? I didn't mean to interrupt you, Paul. Is there an everyday thing that you have to do? You know, meditation? Is it the reading? Is it just, you know, approaching the day, a little bit of reflection? What's something that you've integrated maybe recently or in the past that you've integrated that you want to integrate again into the schedule that maybe really worked, that you said, I really like that. That was a good thing that I was doing for a while?
For sure. Yeah. Daily routine is probably one of my biggest challenges just in my entire life. I am such a all over the place type of guy. And so trying to create any sort of consistent structure, I've always tried to set those structures up. They've always been a challenge for me. I've never been one of those like, oh, I've been waking up at 6 a.m. for the last 10 years. And, you know, like I've never been, that's always been a big challenge of mine. And so I have to put a lot of work into just setting up systems and structures to where I'll even be accountable to myself. One of the things that I did about a month ago is I'm in a local Toastmasters group here. And, you know, everybody in that Toastmasters group is great because they're just all like people all into growth and wanting to improve. And so I asked one of them, her name is Leslie, if she'll be my accountability partner. And I just said, hey, here's what I'm going to do. It's like once a day, I am going to review a stand-up comedy set that I've recorded, either like an open mic or a show. And I'm going to listen to myself, and I'm going to just give a self-critique on how I might improve just one thing. And I always I adapt the philosophy of it's for this is me, it's a lot more challenging for me to try to make big drastic changes. Like I'm going to start writing 5 hours a day. I think like Jerry Seinfeld wrote like 5 hours a day or something like that. If I'm writing 0 hours every single day and I'm just kind of writing when it comes to me, if I try to go from that, for me to go from that to 5 hours a day, because I would try to do those, I would try to make those big leaps and they would never work. But I read a book called Atomic Habits, which really changed my philosophy. And the whole philosophy of Atomic Habits is try to make one little incremental change that is so minuscule that on a daily basis, it's almost impossible not to do. Like, it's so easy. One thing, one little incremental change. However, that little incremental change, if you do that 365 days, you've now made 365 incremental little changes. In the aggregate, over the long term, if you're consistent with it, that is going to have a huge effect as opposed to like one day trying to make a huge change and trying to force that out of willpower. And then after 2 or 3 days, you know, I'm kind of just back to doing what I was before because it's so big, I can't sustain it. So I've really taken that philosophy to heart. And to me, it's like, if I improve my stand-up act, if I just move the needle, just one little adjustment every single day. And plus there will be days when there's more, you know, like I'll go to an open mic and, you know, I'll make, 4 or 5 improvements during that open mic. Or, you know, like this weekend I had a private show and I did an hour. So it's like I have an hour of comedy that I can now go back and review and really listen to the audience response. Am I really communicating clearly what I meant to hear? So, you know, maybe I get 4 or 5, adjustments on that set over the next week. But over the aggregate, as long as I do it every single day, just a little bit, then that will have exponential returns, you know, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And so, but even to keep me accountable on just that little change, I had this accountability partner. And it's like my commitment is I will text you once a night, once I've done my critique. And if I miss a night, I owe her dinner. So that's one thing that I did.
It's good. This is what you need. We need accountability to keep these things going.
Hey, if you're self-disciplined, more power to you. I am not. So, you know, I have to set up these systems to help keep me accountability because it's just so easy for me not to do it. And the way that I live my life, again, I don't live a very structured life. I get busy, I travel, whatever. And so, but just knowing like, oh, I got to text Leslie. Oh, and I have it on my calendar too. So I have a recurring calendar appointment. So every single night I get a calendar notification saying, hey, did you text Leslie? Did you text Leslie? Did you text Leslie? And I go like, oh yeah, I need to. So then I go and listen, critique something, make that change, you know, send her the text. And I did the same thing, just also with my physicality. So, you know, I'm about to turn 40 and I realized after the pandemic that I'm really not in a position to where I can just kind of let my health take care of itself and my physical health. And I played basketball about 2 months ago. It was the first time I played basketball since the pandemic, and I hadn't really been too active during the pandemic. Oh man, and it ruined me. Like I almost couldn't walk for like 3 days, and it was only half court, and I played for like an hour. It's like I used to play this game for like 2 hours full court, and I'd be fine. And I was like, this is a problem. So same thing, like I got a personal trainer. I've never had a personal trainer. Started working with a trainer named Sam Mamgani, who's just incredible. And again, it's just accountability. It's somebody who knows what they're doing. And then on top of that, I downloaded this app that I need to check in with every single day that holds me accountable for exercising twice a day, drinking a gallon of water. So I'm drinking a gallon of water every day. But this app, it just keeps reminding me, hey, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And so just putting those accountability partners in place to where I'm constantly being reminded what my goals are, what I'm working on, what I'm trying to do. And again, it's just, you know, those incremental changes. It's like I meet with I'm meeting with my personal trainer later today. It's like I meet with him once or twice a week and it's only 2 hours, but it's like those 2 hours, within that hour, I don't really see or notice any change. But, you know, it's now been 2 months And whereas 2 months ago, I couldn't even get through a half court game of basketball without without being so sore, I couldn't walk for 3 days. It's like now I can go to the basketball court and I can play full court again, and I can play 2 hours, and I'm starting to see some definition happen, and all that. But it's little changes over time.
Absolutely.
And putting myself in a position to where it's like it's all long game. It's all long game. And anybody can have little short spurts of success here or there. But I mean, how many times have we seen that where somebody blows up? They get some sort of lucky streak or whatever, and then a year later, I mean, they're done because they didn't actually have the talent or the longevity or the mental strength to to keep at it, and it's a lot. So I always I'm setting myself up to where it's like I'm going to play this game until I die. So everything that I do is geared towards longevity. I don't want to burn out. I don't want to put myself in a position to where I'm not able to sustain my life. I'm not going to put myself in a state of poverty. I'm not going to put myself in a state to where I'm not able to take advantage of the opportunities. But I'm also not going to go so hard, try to make huge sacrifices to where, in a week or a month or a year, I'm so burnt out that it's, that I'm out. I look at it as this is the long-term game. I don't have a 5-year plan, and if I'm not successful in 5 years, I'm moving back home. I'm in this game until I die. So whatever success happens within that time frame, it's all great, but I'm just learning to just love that journey, love the opportunity, love the highs, love the lows, love the successes as well as the failures. Love it when I don't get the part. Love it when I get the part. Love it when I book the show. Love it when I don't book the show. Love it when I bomb. Love it when I crush.
Absolutely.
And just set myself up to where, I don't have a 2-year plan. I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't have a 10-year plan. I'm in this game until I die, and then I will be done.
That's the approach you need to have for this stuff, though, and that's the approach you've equipped yourself with, and it shows, and I see that it allows you to keep going with your personal development, and that's what you need as a person. Like you said, you get burnt out, you never go back to that, and with these micro changes, these micro tasks, it compounds. You're so right about that, and it's undeniable. There's no secret to success. You work that muscle. I think that's why we have a lot of respect for all of these people with these bodies, the sculpted, because it doesn't just happen overnight unless you have good genetics. But usually it's you don't just do 1,000 dumbbell rows and then suddenly you got a 6-pack. It's like you have to know that they figured out that you have to take the approach slow. It's all about form. Everything is form. Everything is how you do it. You approach these things in life. You can't just run at everything. You can't just approach it like that. You have to approach it with ease and with patience. And at the same time, once you do these micro tasks, you get better at them. And like you said, on some days, you might do it even a little bit better than the day before, just because you're not caught up in the idea that, man, I haven't done this in a month. I really got to kill it today. And then suddenly your arm is separated from your shoulder because you didn't even, So with this longevity approach with getting better just every day with doing these small things, it's undeniable. I talk to musicians and they say this all the time. I'm playing a really fast track and I can't tell that I'm getting any better, and I'm just doing it. And then by Friday, he's flying through it. He's got the recording. It sounds so clean and so smooth. So it's undeniable. There's no secrets to this, method of operating. You do something every day. The smallest thing, the biggest thing. However, you get better with time. You literally get better as you do that. I think once you equip your mind with knowing and believing that you can get better at something, you start to accomplish some real heights there.
Yeah, I think there's a big misconception in terms of what it means to be talented. I feel often when someone says talent, the underlying assumption is that talent is a God-given innate ability. This person was just born playing piano this well. And although, I would say that people are born with certain
gifts, a little bit of talent.
Yeah, well, I would just say that they're born with a certain sensitivity to pursue certain things, but it's like there was a time when the greatest guitar player on the planet couldn't play guitar at all. Like when they were 3 or when they were 4. The first time they picked up a guitar, they didn't start wailing. Now, if anything, what happened is they were probably just fortunate enough to where they picked up a guitar early, when they were 4, when their minds could learn really fast, and then they learned incredibly at a high rate while they're using that, the high energy and, the young, ambitious energy to just learn. And so then that just put them on a trajectory to where they were so much more advanced than somebody like me who picked up a guitar when I was 15. I'm not going to be able to catch up to a Bruce Springsteen or Eric Clapton or whoever you want to point to as one of the great guitar players. And it's the same thing with singing. I think it's the same thing with acting. It's the same thing with comedy. I just think that the people who are talented just started younger and got more reps in faster. And the more reps you get in, the more exponential your growth. And same thing with like athletes, yes, you can be born with an athletic body, but there are plenty of people who are 6'5" and 250 pounds who are not in the NBA, who are not in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
There's something also about LeBron James, who was born, and athletics is probably that example because I know there are some physical attributes that definitely give you an advantage. So I'm not trying to minimize that, but
take what you have though, and you had to propel yourself further. You're right about that. They may have had these things that not everybody has, size, height, but they had to still work to get to that place. You might have a little bit more than someone, and good for you, but if you're not that person, you're not going to let that hold you back, because there's no reason why you can't get amazing and great at something and accomplish these heights. There's no reason at all. Nobody's first in line unless that doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Steph Curry. I mean, what made him so great? I mean, he's not that tall. There are plenty of people the same height as him, and the same type of build. What made him great he was in the gym an hour early before anyone else at any practice. When he showed up, he wasn't on his headphones hanging out talking to his friends. He was there, and he had 1,000 shots already practiced before practice began, and then he would do practice, and then everybody would leave, and then he would shoot another 1,000 shots. Same with like Larry Bird. He was in the arena 3 hours before the game shooting free throws before anyone even showed up. And then after the game, he would go back and he would shoot more free throws. I think Kobe Bryant, I think somebody posted his like work schedule. It was something like 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. and it was like 2 hours of practice before most of us are even waking up, and then and then he would do his thing, and then another 2 hours of practice. So
right.
I think as probably in the Western culture, we have a tendency to want everything to be, we just want a pill. Well, give me a pill and then I'll lose weight. Well, give me a pill and then I'll be happy. Give me a pill and then I'll have energy, whatever it is. And, fine and dandy, but I think that we would find more and more that the people who obtain those levels of success that perhaps that we're aspiring to, what we would see is just a lot of reps, just a lot of reps. And
run away from those reps.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with like, stand-up comedians, it's like there are stand-up comedians who maybe do 1 to 2 open mics a month. I used to be one of those, when I first started, I wasn't taking it that seriously. I'd do maybe 2-3 open mics. I didn't like open mics. They were uncomfortable. I don't want to perform in front of a bunch of comics. And, I had all the excuses and stuff. And then about 2 years ago, when I really decided that I really wanted to see how good I could get at stand-up, I was like, I can't make those excuses anymore. And I'm like, I need to do an average of 1 a day. And in LA, that's actually very easy to accomplish, is an average of 1 a day, because you can do 3 or 4 open mics in a day. You can do 5 or 6 in a day if you plan it out. And so I just said, all right, I'm going to do a minimum of 1 a day. And by the end of the year, I'd done over 400 open mics or performances. And the result of that was I got a little better. I got a little better, like with that much work, I improved a little bit. But, if I'm going to become a Dave Chappelle or a Bill Burr, it's like, how much practice are they putting in? I guarantee at a minimum of one a day. That's probably on the low end. That's probably if they're having a busy week. They'll do one a day. They're probably up towards 10, 13, 14, 15 reps in a week.
Without a doubt.
So anyway, yeah, that's it's not sexy. It's not fun. I think it's probably not what a lot of people want to hear. They want to hear like there's some sort of fast pass or some sort of secret. Hey, and if there is, I'd love to hear it, but I sure as heck don't know it.
And a lot of people, they blame the game. They blame situations that are not in their control. They say, you know what? They didn't give it to me. I didn't get the right spotlight. You're approaching it in the sense that there's work to be done. And if you get better with it, you're going to get a different response versus just letting that version of yourself stay where you were and then blaming other things. You're getting better as you go. And that's what people need to know. You get better as you go, and then forget about that. You're not even worrying about how you did it initially months before, because you're that much better 2 months later. And that's what I see with you watching your comedy. A lot of people can't watch themselves. They're so afraid to. All of that, hearing yourself talk, hearing yourself bomb, that's hard to do, but you need to do that.
Yeah. And I've heard both ways. I mean, I have heard, successful comedians say like, oh, once I film it or record it, I can't watch it myself. But I guarantee that they have a system for improvement in place, and maybe it's just they're able just to go and based off of the feedback in the audience that they hear in the moment, and then they're able to go back and make those adjustments. I know for me, I can look at myself objectively, most of the time objectively, and I can at least tell if what I'm hearing myself say is what I intended to say, and if I'm in the right emotional underpinning for what it was that I was going for. And if I miss the mark, I can sense that in myself, or I can sense like, oh yeah, that punchline actually isn't, quite hitting as hard as I want, and obviously I can also hear how the audience responds. It's like, oh, okay, the audience didn't latch onto that one as much, especially when I have a comparison. It's like, oh, well, they laughed really hard at this. So it's not like I can blame the audience. It's like the audience was there for me on this joke. They were not there for me on this joke. So who's to blame? Is it the audience's fault? Or is that an opportunity for me to go like, okay, well, how can I make this joke like this one? Or maybe that joke just doesn't work with my persona, or maybe I don't need it. Maybe I need to go back and write, 5 or 6 more jokes and try to find more that will also be at that level. So that by the time, I'm doing my Netflix special, it's like I have an hour of all jokes that are up here because I've worked out all of these ones down here, or gotten rid of them and replaced them with something else. So yeah, I would say probably 95% of the time, if the audience isn't laughing, it's the performer's fault. Yeah, every once in a while, there is such a thing as just a horrible audience. I mean, it does exist. But I will say I've been on a lot of shows to where some comedians were complaining about the audience and other comedians were slaying that very same audience. Was it really the audience? Was it really the audience, or was it just maybe you just need to go back, to the drawing board? And I also acknowledge that comedy is subjective. So it is possible that, if you're doing rap music in a country music crowd, or you're doing country music in a rap music crowd, you're probably not going to have that particular crowd. So there is such a thing as demographics. So I don't want to, criticize every comedian and saying like, well, the audience didn't laugh, it's your own fault. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe you are funny in a different demographic, but this just wasn't, the type of demographic who appreciates your style of humor. That, that's definitely a possibility. But in terms of like, but again, I mean, it's happened to me where I went up and, I bombed and the audience just didn't respond to me. And then 2-3 comedians later, comedian is out there and got that exact same audience just totally laughing their heads off. So, well,
this again, the stand-up comedy
game is a very complicated one, and it's a lot of components. You're working with a crowd, so there could be a situation where the crowd needs to work into the comedy atmosphere. In general, those things do happen, but if you have that situational awareness to be aware of that, and that I think happens with doing a lot of those open mics, like you said, if this is your first one of the month and the audience isn't responding, it's going to be hard for you to get back out there because you're going to have that thing in your mind that they weren't laughing the last time you were there. But if you do this every day, hey man, they weren't really laughing at that. You're gonna be like, yeah, you know what, that happens, man. I don't know how many of these you've done, but that happens. Check out the next one. You want to see the next one? I'll do the same joke. You might be different, and things like this start to happen.
Yeah, and if you've done 5 or 6 shows and the audience is still not laughing at that same joke, then it's like, yeah, it's probably the joke. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely, that is the joke.
Update it. I get in a lot of discussions too. It's like, oh well, I'm out there. I just want to speak my truth. It's like, well, that's fine as long as your truth is funny. But this is stand-up comedy. Like, it's entertainment. People are coming to laugh at you, and if what you're saying does not make them laugh, then you're not doing comedy. You can go out there and speak your truth. Great. But if they aren't laughing, you're not doing stand-up comedy. You're doing poetry, or you're doing, or you're doing an oration, or you're doing a speech. And great, go join a Toastmasters and speak your truth and have a speech. But when people are paying money, they are paying for the emotional experience of laughing. And if you're a good comic, they're laughing every 15 to 30 seconds. You can maybe do a little bit longer if you're more of a long form joke teller, like Jesselneck can get away with, 30, 45 seconds because he's just a master joke teller and they're so bought into what he's doing. But, people should be laughing every 15 to 30 seconds as a comedian. And if you can get consistent laughter, then you're doing it well. And if you happen to be speaking your truth while you're doing it, more power to you. But, to me, that's a personal agenda, which, if that's what your agenda is, then do something else to where you can just, speak your truth. But to me, I look at it's like, it's entertainment. If I pay money to see a Beyonce concert, I want to see Beyonce come out and do music. I don't want her to come out and talk about politics for 10 minutes. Do that on a podcast, Beyonce, like do that when it's appropriate. I paid money to, for your entertainment, for your voice, for your dancing, for your choreography. It's the same with stand-up comedy. It's like people paid to laugh.
Very interesting.
And if your truth happens to be funny, then yes, speak your truth. But if your truth isn't funny, then either make it funny or do something else,
Face the tomato in the face. How can our audience find you on social media?
I'm Paul Green Comedy all across the board. Twitter, I don't tweet a lot, but Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the Grams, the YouTubes, Snapchat, Paul Green Comedy, and then my website is paulgreencomedy.com.
Moving forward, really appreciate it, Paul.
That's good, my man.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely. All right, Jasper. Well, how can our audience find you on social media?
Just like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I have TikTok now as well, even though I don't understand it yet. How it works. Just my name, Jasper Erkens, Erkens. And people can find me there. Yeah. Thank you very much, Troy. See you later.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Take care.